sadness and isolation, depression, loneliness, and all that. But before wrestling with those two questions, let me just very, very quickly talk about the question that Muhammad asked about two different versions of the Quran. One happens to be 114 chapters, and one happens to be 116 chapters in the museum in France. In our writing, and this is not about Islam or Christianity or Judaism or any tradition that has written scriptures, the printing press was invented in Germany around the 15th century. Prior to that period, what you have is people who are interested in certain ideas. They would sit together and write things down. You know, it's like, I don't know how to write, but I know that you know how to listen well. I have a great memory, but you don't, so I tell you what I've heard or witnessed, and you write it down. And then I will ask you to go home and write things in a very organized way, and you do. And as you're writing, you realize there are certain things that I have said that you don't like, so you remove them. There are certain things that you do like, but you realize that I haven't really explained too well, so you add to it. And that's how things have been for a long, long, long time. And since we used to be oral people, oral cultures, it meant that there is no thing called writing. It's all the word of mouth. I speak to your ears, you speak to your child's ear, then your child grows up to be a man, become a husband. He adds to the story and then relates that story to his child. And a story that used to be a paragraph now is a book. Okay? So one of the best examples of this is around the 19th century or so. You know, since the Western culture had become very secular, they put the Old Testament and the New Testament under the microscope. It's not something that the Quran went through. It's not something that the Buddhist scripture, the Taoist scriptures went through, or the Hindu scripture. Because these cultures have not yet been secularized. They're not just meat without spirit. America and to some extent Europe has become that, meat and no spirit. So what they said, since we entered a scientific revolution, so to speak, that everything needs to kind of go through this test of validity, soundness, they put the New Testament under the microscope and they realized it just doesn't make any sense. If, for example, you have in the Gospel of John Jesus saying that he is God, I mean, that's an important thing to say. Why isn't it being said in the Gospel of Mark? You know, and so why is it, for example, you know, in the Gospel of John you don't have a single story? There is no story in the Gospel of John. But all that aside, around the 15th century came the printing press, and once you're able to put something through a copy machine, no one can ever touch it. It's there for life. In other words, if, for example, you pick up a book today and you order a copy of the same book 20 years from now, there'll be no changes. Maybe someone else will have written the foreword, but that's basically it. And the same thing happened when camera was invented around the 19th or so century. You know, before, if, for example, some of in this class are very rich and powerful, you would invite an artist to your shop, you would sit there and you would tell this artist, can you draw a portrait of me? And of course, it's you, and it's also the artist's temperament and perspective. Once the camera came forth, takes a picture and that's it. It's actually you. It's not subjective. The camera doesn't have feelings. It's not going to impose its own feelings on how it wants you to be, you know, pictured. So, There is also another thing that you need to understand about books. You can read a book because you're bored. You can read a book because it's entertaining. You could read a book because you want to think about it. You can read a book because you're inspired. Sometimes you read, say, the Gospel of John, or you read the book of Job because you're in pain. Sometimes you read the book of Job because you need to go to church and give a sermon. Sometimes you read the book of Job because you're an atheist, you're a Marxist, or most of your friends are Christians or Jews, and you want to reveal to them how stupid they are. So you know the book of Job inside and out. So when they say A, you can say A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And all of a sudden the Christian or the Jew or the Muslim will say, oh my God, I don't think I know my stuff too well. And so you turn them into an atheist. And then a communist. And then once their life becomes meaningless, they'll become isolated and depressed.
Gee, nice.
So it matters very little whether the Quran is 114 chapters or 116. It matters very little who wrote the Gospels. The question is, how are you going to approach it? If you're a heterosexual man and you want to go out on a date, sits before you a woman, let's just say. The woman can exist on different stages. In other words, she could be there because she just wants free food. She's there maybe because she wants to just have sex. She's there because maybe she's just on a rebound. She's there maybe she's bored. She's there maybe because she wants to see if she can find a lifelong companion. You know. And so how she approaches the date determines where exactly you're going to be. If she wants a lifelong, but you're on a hit and run, it's not going to work out too well. If you're cheap and she wants like lobster and you want to take it to In-N-Out, it's not going to work out too well. So books are very much the same way. How are you going to approach it? And the best way to approach any book is first to figure out where exactly you are in your own life. I don't like people who read books because they want to escape certain areas of their life. It doesn't serve anyone any purpose, any good. If you're messed up, read books about being messed up. Marx or Kierkegaard or Jesus Christ, they're not going to resolve your issues. Those days are gone. We have entered a new age. Now, all that aside, let's talk about sadness and then isolation. Any of this class have ever heard of Elizabeth Kubler Ross? If you're young, it's good for you to kind of visit that woman to figure out what her philosophy is. If you're not so young, Ray, I wasn't looking at you. Do not be deceived by my eyes. If you're getting up there and you slowly witness your body decaying and decomposing, it's not a bad thing to kind of visit Elizabeth Kubler Ross. She is German. Her story is very much like Mother Teresa. Mother Teresa was this like 14, 15-year-old young woman who just goes to India for a visit to help some poor people, homeless people. And for some strange reason, she falls in love with India, with poverty, with the smell. None of you in this class have been to India, but it's not a very pretty place. At least it wasn't when I was there. It's dirty and smelly. But all that aside, she falls in love. Why, how, who the hell knows? She was a nun. She sends a couple of letters to the Pope saying that she actually wants to be stationed in Calcutta or Delhi or Dehradun, somewhere in India, so she can continue helping people. The Pope says no. Again, she asks, and ultimately the Pope says fine. And she spends the rest of her life in India, But there came a point to her life where she was disgusted by people, she was disgusted by poverty, she was disgusted by compassion, she was disgusted by forgiveness. But it was something that she had signed up to do. So she was basically condemned by the promise she had made to herself. You know, it's like I sit in my office, I'm writing, having a good time with my thoughts, and there's a knock on my door. And I open the door and there's a student. Oh, I've missed a lot of work. Oh, what can I do to pass the class? If you've been in the business of teaching and tending to students' needs for 20, 30, 40, 50 years, it's difficult to look at them and say, I really don't care. I'll fail you. But you gotta sit there, listen to them, coming up with all these ridiculous excuses. And so that's the story of Mother Teresa. Elizabeth Kubler Ross is very much the same way, in the sense that I don't know how or why at such a young age someone becomes so enamored, so interested, so curious about death, sickness, old age, and how people cope with getting old and eventually dying, especially dying with a good amount of pain. And she came up with 5 different steps that people go through. Now, a lot of questions that most of you in this class have asked about, is there a way to get rid of isolation? Is there a way to heal from being broken from a very young age? Is there a way out of sadness? These are all dishes that you need to have the proper ingredients to go into your kitchen, to take them out of the cupboard, to chop them, cook them, wait for them, to get really, really well cooked, and then you eat them. Loneliness and overcoming loneliness is a dish. And now the question is, what sort of ingredients do you need to overcome loneliness? The ingredients used to be, at least for many of us, not for you guys because your culture really sucks, but my time, Ray's time, Kevin's time, there's a book that some of you in this class may be interested in. It's by a man, psychologist, someone who enjoyed Sigmund Freud very much. His name is Rollo May. He wrote a book called The Cry for Myths. And to make the concept of myth relatively simple for all of us to understand, it means the following. Imagine you've been going out with someone for about 2, 3, 4, 5 years. You've traveled a lot, you've created a lot of stories together. But one day, after maybe 5 or 6 years, you wake up, you look at them, and it is true that you've done a lot of things together. You have an arsenal of stories or narratives that have given birth to this particular relationship. But you wake up this one morning and you realize none of the stories that you made in the past are sufficient to nourish where you are at. So you look at this woman or this man and you say, you're no longer fulfilling me. It's the conflict between the mind and the heart. That your mind says, she depends on you, she loves you, she needs you, she this, she that. But your heart or your mind or your heart says, be authentic. This is your life. You're suffocating in this relationship. Move away. And so you'll spend the rest of your life probably just figuring out whether you should stay or you should go. It's not easily resolvable. Anyways, Rollo May had argued that when you look at cultures such as Rome, such as Greece, what you realize is that when they fall because they no longer have any stories that govern the psyches of their people. Read the book of Job. It's a really, really, really good book. And again, don't read the book because you're religious. Read the book because you're curious and you want to understand your own place in the grand scheme of things. When Job goes through all those miserable events in his life, he doesn't say my dad, he doesn't say my mom, he doesn't say Donald Trump or George Bush, he doesn't say Satan, he doesn't say capitalism. You know what he says? Why is God doing this thing? You don't need therapy, you don't need medication. The culprit is God, period. That's a good story to have. Because you know that everything that happens in human life happens because God wills it. And so your pain is baptized by religion. You don't take your issues to a therapist or a book or weed or alcohol. You take it to a synagogue, to a church. It's beautiful. But when you remove that particular narrative from people's psyche, what do you have now? My father A, my mother B, America C. Where the hell are you going to take these issues? Who are you going to find as competent? Since I'm a bit of a cynic and I don't know if there are any ways out of these modern issues, and since this culture is dying and it's killing anyone who lives in it, I'll tell you the best way to cope with all the crap that lives in our life. And I suppose you could consider these 5 steps as a solution to how you can deal with your miserable, pathetic world of an existence. Whenever you have a question or a puzzle that is emotionally based, it's not like something you think about casually or callously. You feel it intensely, and it robs you of sleep, of rest, of comfort. It's like a puzzle, and you want to find the pieces, to put the pieces together in a very nice, harmonious way, so you can just say, I'm done with this puzzle, let's move on to the next. What happens when you begin to realize you're missing a lot of pieces, you have no choice but to become very, very angry, and that's the first step. I'm sorry, you don't become angry, that's the second step. What happens to you first is you deny. You say, oh no, I am competent. I can do this. I am intelligent. My kid brother always tells me I'm wise and insightful. Oh, I read the Bible. I take a philosophy class. So then you deny the fact that there is something profoundly sick and miserable about you. You know, it's like when you go out with 5 or 6 or 7 different people and they all leave you, and you say, I'm not the problem, they're the problem. You know? You kind of just say, no, I deny the fact that I'm stupid. Some of you don't want to be sad. So you distract yourself. You deny the fact that you are sad. That's the first order of business. We are creatures who deny things really, 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 really well. And it's such a comforting thing to be able to put one's head in sand and not see anything. Remember that scene in the movie, Remember the Titans, when they have won this game and their white friends are, you know, it's black and white football players, and they become really good friends. And the white players look at the black players, and they're like brothers now. They say, let's go into this bar and have a drink. And And the black players say, are you kidding? They're going to like shoot us. No. He says, no, trust me. And they go in. And the owner says, I'm not serving these black people. Get out. And that's the thing. You deny certain truths about society. You deny certain truths about culture. You deny certain truths about just how stupid people are. And that's what we do really well. You know, some of you have not turned in a single work for this class. What's most amazing is you have not yet dropped the class, and you come and sit in this class shamelessly. What the hell happened to your shame? Self-respect. You haven't even knocked on my office door to beg for forgiveness, and yet somewhere deep inside your pathetic, miserable little self, you say, oh no, I think I'm going to pass this class. It makes no sense. You keep shitting on your companion, and you say, oh no, they love me. Really? You know Robin Williams, Al Pacino, great actors. It took them a long, long while to come on TV and say, I'm an addict, I'm an alcoholic. And no one can overcome alcoholism by themselves. They need a support system. It took them 20 years. They used to categorize themselves as social drinkers. So remember what happens when you realize something very, very insightful, profound truth about yourself. You will deny it. Now, many of you are young, and youth is usually wasted on the young. Listen to three old people in this room, Kevin, Ray, and myself. Your life will turn out really bad. Really bad.
Maybe no war.
No, there is no need for wars anymore. For your life to turn out to be bad. Your life is just bad, period. Because for any life to work, it's like an engine of a car. You need a set of components. And those components need to work together harmoniously. You need parents. You need grandparents. You need aunts, uncles, siblings. You need a society that works. You need a neighborhood that works. You need money. You need security. You need a healthy psychology. You have none of them. It's completely bankrupt. But no, we deny all the stuff we see on TV. All the awful news. We are exempt. Out of 1,000 people every semester or every year, Laney only outputs maybe, 25 graduates. We have about 13,000 students. How many graduates do we have? How many of them are actually able to go to a 4-year school and complete their degrees? But no, you're exempt. So, remember, one of the ways that most of us in this class can survive life is by denying certain truths about the things we see on a daily basis in our culture, in our society, especially about our own selves. That's how we survive. But you should know something about Kevin, Ray, and myself. As you get older, your ability and capacity to deny becomes less and less and less. Because the mistakes that you have made, sometimes huge mistakes, slap you in the face. And once you realize that you can no longer deny certain truths about yourself, you enter the second stage. It's called anger. Now, remember, anger is an emotion that has history in it. Initially, when you try to make your life work for yourself, for other people, for your friends, for your family, for your kids, you become frustrated, you become confused, you become angry eventually. And not only do you judge yourself, condemn yourself harshly, but you also are condemned by other people. You know, I know some of you know that you haven't done much work for this class and you know you're going to fail. That's a judgment that you place on yourself. But you come to class and I shove that once again in your face, but this time it's not you doing it to you, me doing it to you. But just wait until your parents see your grades. Where your mom asks, so honey, how do you do in your philosophy class? Got an F, Mom. F? What is wrong with you? Anger. Anger makes you sad. So remember, first we deny. We have no choice but to deny. We are governed by fantasies, dreams, illusions, that we are exempt from the slings and arrows of life. Have you guys heard of Aldous Huxley? The guy who liked drugs very much? LSD, LCD, LHD, HDHD. There is this wonderful paragraph that he has in one of these books that at the end of every life, your best companion, regardless of how intelligent, how wise, how much of a prophet you may be, at the end of, near the end of your life, your best friends will be sickness and vomit. Isn't that beautiful? That mentally you know that you just need to get a razor blade and slit your throat to just end the pain. But there are things inside you that give you false hope. My father-in-law, who had cancer, stage 4, he always believed that he's going to beat this disease. And he eventually died. A very painful death. So remember, anger. These are universal truths, people. You and I will have no choice but to deny certain realities of our life. You will never, ever, ever be in love with anyone for too long. Life will always push you back to yourself. And if you don't want to do that, you will look at your companion's face and ask yourself, why don't I feel anything? It doesn't mean you need to move away from the relationship. It just means that you were born alone, you're going to live alone. You just have someone to eat with. Now, because we are problem-solving animals, we have no choice but to journey ahead to fix the issues that we see or we have in our lives. You'll try, like Ray and Kevin and I, you'll try the best. You'll make some things work, but you'll make many things worse. So not only denying is a companion to us, but also anger, because there comes a point where you realize you've done so much and you've gained so little. And then you'll do something that will push you into the third stage, something that most of you will eventually do in this class. You'll come to my office with bags of coffee and bags of money. And this is where compromise comes in. You want to make a deal. You know, let's make a deal, that show on TV. How about 20 bags of 1 pound French roast dark from Starbucks for a C? How about a bag full of money, like the ones they carried in the movie Scarface to banks? How if I buy you a car? How about this? How about that? Compromise. You've always been mean to your parents, you've always been mean to your companions, but now you're sick. You can no longer deny the fact that you're sick. You try to go to doctors, take medication to heal yourself to no avail. You realize for the first time you need help. But you've been a shitty human being. No one wants to be around you. Sure, you blame other people for the fact that you're shitty. They don't pay attention to you enough. They don't love you enough. They don't care for you enough. Yeah, of course. Then you realize you need them. So what do? I am so sorry for being such a crappy human being. Forgive me. I will be nice. Can you just wipe my ass? Because I can't do it on my own. I know I've been a shitty employee. I apologize. Can I keep my job? I never believed in God, but now I'm reading the Gospel of John because it's a great book. I want to go to church because I need help. But here's the thing you need to know. Sometimes it's very difficult to fix the past. Sometimes it's very difficult to just fix things, period. You just don't have the capacity, the energy, the resources. And especially if you happen to be somewhat religious, you keep praying, but there is no answer back. Absolutely. Yeah. What are you going to do when you come to my office with a bag of money or coffee and I say no, get lost? If I was to tell you I don't live by bread alone, I have money to buy myself coffee. I need you to think well, not for me, so that you could kind of iron out a few wrinkles in your miserable existence. And once I reject your gifts, what are you going to do? You think you're going to be happy? No. You're going to fall into the fourth stage. It's called depression. Assalamu alaikum. You've tried so many different ways to make your life work for you, but there are no answers. You can no longer deny. You've gone through many, many years or decades of anger, and you thought that by reading books, by doing psychology, by doing therapy, by hanging out with your friends, by smoking, drinking, you can get rid of the shit that lives inside you. No. Just doesn't work. And then you get depressed. Oh man, and depression has its own set of anger. And makes such a lonely, lonely world. It sucks. Whatever you touch just withers, decays. You know, for myself, Ray and Kevin, we can date. It's not that we can't date. But we know why we date. We don't want to die alone. We don't want to be sick alone. We don't want to go through life alone. The three of us don't have the capacity to love anymore. We can be inspired, we can be moved, but life for us is far too busy now. Maybe it's just far too simplified. We see too much, we know too much. And even though if you want to deceive yourself in thinking that, yes, I can love, deep down your intuition, i.e. your heart, will tell you, no. It's just nice to have coffee with someone. And like a man who's drowning in this ocean of depression, you try to get yourself out only to realize the more effort you make, the further down you go. And then if you're lucky, very, very, very lucky, you look yourself in the mirror, you look at your parents or your siblings, and you say, I have come to accept that I have always been a shitty human being. I fully accept the fact that I denied, blamed other people for being such an awful person. I accept the fact that I have been going through my life with a good amount of poison, i.e. anger. I accept the fact that I try to deceive myself. Pray, bargain, being dishonest. I accept the fact that I am lonely, depressed, and sad. But I accept, and I accept because I understand. And that is your liberation. That is your ticket to freedom. Acceptance. But it comes at the very, very last stage, you see. It's like when you go out with someone, you happen to be 90, and the woman or the man asks you, why are you here with me on this date? Are you looking for a lifelong companionship? No. Tonight I'm just inspired to have coffee with someone. I don't want to do relationships. You know that when you go home, you walk home alone. And after your date, you're going to take a shower, go home, take a shower and sit and watch a nice little movie all by yourself because you know you're too tired to listen to somebody else's story. You just don't care. So what does that mean in terms of most of us who are young in this class? You see so many wrong things in life, not just yours, life period. You will deny it. You will try to fix all the issues out there. There comes a point after 5 or 10 or 15, 20 years you realize you just don't know. You have no power. And it's going to make you so damn angry. And then you're going to find people in your life, in your space with whom you want to bargain. Only to realize it doesn't really matter how much and how often you sleep with NRA. They're far too powerful. They will give you a break once or twice, but for the most part, they want to rule. I will give you a C in this class, but I gotta tell you, when you go to a 4-year school, instructors are not going to give a shit about who you are, what you've been through. You can bargain with me with a bag of coffee. 4-year school is a very, very different story. If you're a failure at Laney, you're going to be a failure at San Francisco, at Yale, at Harvard, and Stanford. It doesn't really matter. And there comes a point where you realize that you can no longer blame other people for your wrongs. Every single one of you will deny. Every single one of you will work really hard to work through the issues. Every single one of you will fail. And you'll be in the cradle of anger for a long, long time. Every single one of you will sleep with people whom you don't want to sleep with. Instructors you don't like. Books you don't like. Essays you don't like. Schools you don't like. Jobs you don't like. You will give your soul for $10. You have no choice. It's called bargaining. Depression waits for all of us. As my good friend Jean-Paul Sartre would say, it's true that you have been very successful in getting over boredom from 9 to 10:15, but boredom, unlike you and I, is very, very patient. It'll wait at your door for 10 years perhaps, but eventually it'll shove the door open and say, remember me? I never left you. I am back to tell you how pathetic you are. And if you're able to overcome depression in a healthy way, if you don't get yourself addicted to alcohol or drugs or porn or anger or whatever, hopefully you'll have certain people who can guide you and support you to reach this place called acceptance. Some of you will fail this class, which means the following. Go back in time and ask yourself, how many classes did you miss? How many assignments did you miss? How interested were you in this class? How much work did you put in? If you're able to overcome all the denials, you will get to a place of acceptance. In fact, you will say, I deserve an F, and I accept the F. And you can enjoy the rest of your summer. If on the other hand, you blame me for your misdeeds, you're going to have a miserable summer. Acceptance. That's Elizabeth Kubler Ross's wisdom for all of us. And you don't have to die physically. When you look at a companion, you can no longer feel anything about them. That's an emotional death. You will try to rescue the relationship by going to cruises, going on hikes, going to fancy restaurants. But after a while, you come to realize you just have to accept the fact that it's a loveless relationship. Yeah.
When you speak and purposefully tap students' emotions, and do it very well. How do you do it without an ego involved? Because I mean, once you told me that you have to be broken to be able to do that.
I think you can find your answer by going to a funeral where you see a father or a mother or a sibling having just lost someone they cared for. They cry, they scream perhaps, and what they do will move you. And you will ask them, how can you so easily move me to tears? I don't even know you. Look, there was a movie with Al Pacino and Michelle Pfeiffer some years ago. I think it's called Frankie and Johnny. He was in prison, he got out, he worked at this cafe for a few days, and it was his first day on the job where a waitress dies. She was an older woman, and he goes to the funeral, and he stands there, he cries a little bit. The next day he goes back to work, and Michelle Pfeiffer, who's a younger waitress, looks at him and says, why did you come to the funeral service? You didn't even know this woman. And he said, it's true that I didn't know her physically, but what I do know about human beings is that when they go to bed, they put their hopes and dreams under their pillow. And then when they wake up, they want to remove or bring out their hopes and dreams and realize them in daily life. And I know that this woman had dreams, had hopes. She never realized them, and I'm sad for her. And so I think once you come to a place of understanding, and that's one of the things you need to kind of grasp, if there is any ego about you, once you have a really, really good grasp on things, you don't have to worry about ego. There is a thing about understanding means you take yourself somewhere, very quiet, very isolated, and you sit there and you're trying to hammer out what you have witnessed so you can see it, and then you try to process. There is feelings involved, thinking involved, reflecting involved, sadness involved, all sorts of emotions are involved, but you have to do it alone, on your own. And when you become accustomed in the habit of now healthy aloneness, I'm not talking about being a savage, like going to a party and just sitting somewhere by yourself, and when people look at you, you just want to throw up because they intuit something profoundly disgusting about you. When you become in the habit of processing things well, then you realize, when you go to places, when you speak, you don't really need the attention because you've become self-sufficient over the course of like 5 or 10 or 15, 20 years of just producing ideas on your own. Just in case you have an audience, it's great. Kevin? Anything? That's Ray.
No. That's great. Well, I'm going to tell you, really my initial question of can you be isolated without feeling lonely? Basically, I want to know, am I crazy? Because I'm not lonely. But I'm definitely living on the isolation tip.
Look, it depends how engaged you are. For those of you who may not know, can I just tell them?
Sure.
Okay. So listen, you go to school, so a certain part of your day is full. You have also a 5-year-old daughter. 7 years, sorry. So a more portion of your life is taken. And when your hours are taken, it means you have no choice but to be engaged. It doesn't mean you're not going to reflect and say, this is just nonsense. You can have this reflection. This reflection will create a distance between you and the activity. But if the activity is demanding, it'll suck you back in it. Okay? Then you also have a job. So out of the 24 hours that exist in a day, your day is occupied, busy, taken, devoured by life, maybe 12, 13, 14 hours. Now, there are these moments where you have arthritis, and you have aches, and you have pain, and then you worry about your daughter. You worry about your job. You worry about how much longer you can actually continue going to school with your physical health, if you're ever going to find anyone in your life. And the more you begin to reflect on this stuff, the more isolated you will become. So my recommendation would be the following. Make sure you don't have any free time to think. As long as your brain is always occupied. If you have a virus in your head that's very ambitious, that says do this and then do this and then do this, you may have maybe an hour or two throughout the day when you sit, you reflect, you find everything to be stupid. And that can be painful. But that's only 2 hours. You may wake up a few times, to pee, and while you're standing and peeing, you kind of bang your head to the wall saying, life really sucks. But then you go back to bed, hopefully you fall asleep right away. But, there are certain realities about just getting old. You can't fix them. It's just good to keep yourself very, very busy. And don't take philosophy classes that will make your life, or at least the things that you do, you will begin to feel that they are meaningless. Examining your life is really, really good. but it's seasonal. In other words, it's good to examine your life from the age, say, 15, all the way to about maybe 30, maybe 20, 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Because if you're married and now you want to examine your life, your relationship is in jeopardy, your kids are in jeopardy of losing a father, your job, your security, everything, is under insecurity. At your age, you don't need to think too many about these things. Just find some things that you find meaningful, valuable, pursue them. Free time, date people. Just date them.
There's no free time as a single parent. That doesn't exist.
Well, maybe on your dating app you could say, I can't go out because I got a 7-year-old. If you want to date me, come to my fucking house and cook for
I'm
me.
close to your age. We wouldn't use a dating app. I'm sure if you asked this gentleman here, he wouldn't use a dating app either. Would you use a dating app?
Yeah, I have.
Oh, you have?
As a form of distraction.
But I was younger, but still.
Okay, younger.
Yeah, like yesterday.
I was 50 instead of 66.
Okay. That makes a difference.
Look, from this point on, it's about distracting yourself in a healthy way. These young farts, they need to look at things carefully. For you and I, no man. Looking at things closely will give you a stroke.
At least my two therapists both had strokes.
See?
And you know what they
Sucks
told
to
me?
be a psychologist in America, yeah.
They told me to hit the brakes, that I had too much on my plate.
Oh, stupid
And you're
people.
telling me to keep my plate full.
Oh, yeah, keep it
but
full.
that's when, I have to use my own observation of my own life and figure out just...
One of the best ways to cope with, people our age is become religious, man. Seriously, start going to church. The Gospels of Thomas.
It's time to go.
Go where? There is nothing out there waiting for you, man. No, I'm just kidding. Have a good time. The Gospels are really, really beautiful books. Buddhist scriptures. They're good books.
They're great. But when you have a mother that's a Baptist, well, I had a mother that's a Baptist, and I got a father that's a Muslim, there's a conflict.
Oh, there is no conflict, man.
Sure, because part of me says, if I go this way, I'm going to go to heaven without my
Oh, fuck heaven and hell. You go to your mom and you say, let's read the Gospels. Then you go to your dad and you say, let's read the Quran.
Yeah.
Then you go home and you just puke. But really, no free time. It's bad. For young people, it's good because self-examination at young age is good. At our age, it's good if you have the resources. You got lots of money, you're on your yacht and in the middle of the Pacific Ocean and you're thinking about life, that's great. But if you're a character in Castaway movie, no, that's not going to be too good for you.